You have done it all. Manchester United, England, media, pundit, mogul.
Jude, there's something different about this guy, man. Like, he's just not a footballer. He's going to be, I think, someone who shifts culture.
Everybody in England always wants to know, what is it going to take to not just have 66?
I think it's the culture and belief and bravery. I think we've been to finals and maybe we've been a bit like this. Oh, wow. It's gone. I'm thinking it's gone now. We've lost it. Any people I've met in football, in sport, in business, they are not normal people. The ones who are the super elite. It's no coincidence who Ronaldo became. He's obsessed with details. He's obsessed with getting the edge physically, getting the edge mentally. Ronaldo just comes onto YouTube now. Got 50 million YouTube subscribers in like 5-6 days.
It's so depressing.
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
Here we are, slogging it out. He gets, the plaques on the first day.
I love that Sriram compares himself to Ronaldo.
What do you think of Ted Lasso?
These are great. These are unreal. I'm actually writing a show at the moment. Drake came to the training ground and I took him for a walk. This is when he was like on these, like just breaking through.
The current state of Man U. We have the magic wand. You control all things Man U. What would you do?
What would I do?
None of our guests have gotten people in my world so as excited and interested as a person I have to get. We have here right now. I don't know how to introduce you. I mean, you have done it all. Manchester United, England, media, pundit, mogul, restaurateur. Rio, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much. I've been looking forward to it. We've been talking for a while now, so I'm happy to be here in your house as well. It's good.
I know this is our first in-person setup for the podcast in our house in London.
I know.
So this is great. I mean, Rio just showed up in our house. Our kids are very excited. We spent some time playing football.
Yeah.
Not soccer.
We found a left-footed player, so it's good.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, he's 2, and I think he has about 14 years to get after Yamal. So we better get on with it.
Yeah.
No, but I do think we've loved sort of the whole English experience. So I met Rio a while ago, and we've been texting through the Euros, right? And that whole thing and experiencing it here was so different for us from experiencing watching it abroad. For example, we watched the semis. We watched
Yeah, we went to this pub around the corner.
Okay, yeah.
Amazing. What a great experience.
Yeah, and when Jude's equalizer, and then Kane, there is nothing an English pub experience.
It is crazy because I think you've got a lot of people that watch the game from afar, but when you're the country that's actually playing in those games, you're in that country, the whole place is consumed. It's taken over. And like you say, going into a pub, an English pub, watching England play in a Euros or a World Cup is one of the best experiences. It's crazy, especially if they win.
People just went absolutely nuts.
Did you get covered in beer and stuff like that?
Yeah, throwing things everywhere. Beer and chips.
Because there's all these wild videos. Because in the semis, right? I forget what it was. It was in stoppage time, and it looked all over, and and then out of nowhere, really against the run of play, you get an equalizer, and it was just bonkers. And there are all these viral videos of people going crazy. Now, sadly, it didn't really work out. And, I'm curious, maybe let's start there. Let's ask the question, which I think everybody in England always wants to know. What is it going to take to not just have 66, to have England win the big one? It is the question, right? As we sit here in August 2024, what's it going to take?
If I have the definitive answer, I should be manager. No? The FA should come and get me.
Maybe so.
I don't think there's much more to do. I think we have all of the components. We have the players, we have the youth, we have the hunger, we have the desire, we have the infrastructure that's been built. St George's, the centre has been built for this purpose, to win us a big tournament, and now we're getting closer. So we've seen improvement with all the infrastructure that's been built. And the players now are coming to fruition, and we've got them. Gareth Southgate done a marvellous job. He improved England, the morale of the country, the morale of the team, the expectations on the team now, the fans' expectations as well has jumped hugely, which is great. Then there's just that last hurdle to get over. And maybe Gareth wasn't that guy to do that. He was the guy to get us here where we are now. I think it's the culture and belief and bravery when you want to win. When you want to win, I think we've been to finals and maybe we've been a bit like this. And it's a win. When I've been playing in games club football for Manchester United, when we've had big moments, big games and done great things, there has to be an element of bravery. Now, normally people think, being brave is just like, going into a big tackle and closing your eyes and being like that. But it's not. It's about going out and saying, I expect to win. Like the mind shift, the mentality is different. Like I expect, we go out to the Champions League final. It's not always going to happen. We went to 3 Champions League finals, lost 2-1-1. You go out expecting to win. Now, I don't know if England really expected to win. That's my only doubt about that England team. They go out hoping almost, it felt like to me.
Is it a matter of confidence, you think?
Confidence in that situation. Right. I think they're confident anywhere, or you get to the final, then it's almost like it's very different. Right. I've been here. How many of those guys have actually won trophies? How many of those guys have actually won the big trophies? So there's a few for Man City, but the others, not so many. So it's about creating that in the change room, and maybe you need a manager who has that element. Gareth Southgate had, I think, everything else. He put all the pieces together, but that different element in a final to go there and say, right, we're going to win this with conviction, with authority, and with an authenticity as well, which is important. Because a lot of people, you know what it's like in any walk of life, the leader of the group, the leader of the business, if it's not authentic, no one believes it. And the group aren't going to follow.
On the field, I felt like this was the first tournament where I watched Jude Bellingham, right? And I felt like he's the guy, right? And especially in the semis, he felt like, okay, I'm going to take the criticism, I'm going to answer it. And, he's such a young guy. We were just kind of talking upstairs about like super young players like Yamal, but he's such a young guy. And it seems to be like, he's like, okay, this is my moment, my team. And all these folks are so young, if you look at him and like Saka and all these others. So it feels like the trajectory is so bright.
Yeah, and I think this was the tournament, this last Euros was the tournament for the young stars,
right,
to kind of emerge and become the guys. Normally you've got like the big players who are coming into it, you expect them to perform, they normally perform. This one was like the young guys like Nico Williams, Yamal, Jude, Musiala, etc. These guys, and you go, wow, their capacity to handle pressure at such a young age and being exposed to so much with social media, the attention is huge. And I'm full of admiration for these guys. But Jude, there's something different about this guy, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's just not a footballer. He isn't just a footballer. He's more. He seems to be like he's more than that. He's going to be, I think, someone who shifts culture at some point, and not right now, but I think he will end up being that guy who shifts culture and can shape opinion. I think maybe even you might be going too far on a stretch, but just maybe change the way people maybe look at footballers at times in the long run. Because I think he's that impressive.
Yep.
Like I've interviewed loads of players over the last 10 years, and I don't think I've had one who's impressed me like him, especially so young.
Give me an example. What does he do on or off the pitch which makes you go, in a way like a LeBron is different, right? Or shaping culture, or what have you seen him do which makes you go, there's something about it?
Well, he hasn't had a lot of time at the top yet, but since I've seen him, it's like nothing phases him. Yeah. There's no situation that he goes into that you can see there's a nervousness. Like I said before about the England team, he walks into every situation, chest out, head up. There's like a presence, and that takes a lot of confidence, a lot of belief, a lot of hard work. But also, I think there's a lot of components that have come together that have helped him to become this guy and the guy who's going to become. Strong family, 2 parents that are there all the time. You can see they're behind him, giving him and his brother a lot of confidence, consistency. They're there all the time. And that then builds a belief and a confidence for the young person to go out there and show that character. And I just feel, and I interview him, and he doesn't even say, he doesn't skip a beat. Everything just comes out naturally. It's just so unique. And that just makes me feel that there's something more than just football in this guy. He's signed big deals with Skims, with now they're one of the faces of Louis Vuitton. Unheard of, really, these type of deals that he's doing at this age, but it doesn't change him.
By the time this podcast comes out, you'd had this amazing video with Cristiano Ronaldo. And I bring him up because he's somebody, I remember him running out of the pitch in Man U when I was a teenager in India, right? And we've seen many bright stars in many sports who show up at 17, 18. A lot of them flame out. Either they don't have the skills or they can't deal with the lifestyle. Something happens. But Cristiano, still around, still looking ridiculously fit, right? Like, maybe he's lost a step or two, but, he 20 years kind of dominated the sport. And we're talking about Yamal, for example. Maybe we would have preferred that he doesn't score against England, but the guy's like 16. I can't remember what I was doing at 16, but definitely not taking on the pressure of playing for Spain on a stage like that. So when you think about young prodigies and geniuses who kind of come up, what do you think is important to make sure they can then suddenly handle getting millions of Instagram followers and being there, the pressure and also the temptation? What separates the people who make it and the people who don't?
I think first the family support system behind you is very, very important. I think that you look at Cristiano, his mum is pivotal in what he does, always a reference point for him. And if you watch my podcast that's coming out with him, he talks about his mum on there and a situation in the Euros that everyone saw, but his mum was a big part of it. But family, I think, is huge. The way they help shape you, the way we were talking before we came on about family creating, driving individuals, and again, that consistency and building a character that's going to put you in good stead for lifestyle, a lifespan. Also, the team that is built around them. I think Cristiano Ronaldo, he was the first athlete that I ever saw. Now LeBron's doing it as well, but Cristiano was the first one I physically saw with my own eyes build a team around him. So he lived a couple of doors away from me, and I went into his house one day. I should walk in and say, "Yeah, what's going on? Are we up to?" And I saw like 5-6 guys.
Players.
No, 5-6 guys sitting down in the front room. I said, "Chris, who are these guys, man? Who are these guys?" He says, "Yeah, that's my physio. That's my masseur. That's my chef. That's my doctor." I was like, whoa. We got all this at the training ground. He said, "No, but these are my ones." And I was like, so he built a team specifically for him to become the best player. And you roll on 2 years later, he left Man United as the best player in the world with a Ballon d'Or. It's no coincidence who Ronaldo became, because he prepared, like he put the pieces in place for him to become this. And he's obsessed with details. He's obsessed with getting the edge physically, getting the edge mentally. He reads a lot of books. He listens to a lot. He doesn't miss anything on social media. He's across it all. Like, the guy is always looking for an angle. And I said to him the other day when I was with him at his house, "Bro, you've scored 900 goals, man. Like, relax now, surely. Like, it's over, man. Shit, like, come on." Like, he's like,
eat a pizza, put on some, eat some.
yeah, like, and he's watching his food after we're eating lunch, and I can see him meticulously watching his food, almost weighing it in his brain. It's like, I'm sitting there going, this guy is not, it's not normal.
Yep.
But I think any people I've met in football, in sport, in business, they are not normal people. The ones who are the super elite.
And you can tell that's the thing that sets them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because I think to even get to the stage, you have the basics, right? In my world, in your world, like if you're going to play for Man U, if you're going to play, like, you got to be at that tier.
Yeah.
But then what sets aside that person to a Ronaldo, a Messi, a LeBron? I have this great story. I once asked Ron Artist, now Meta World Peace, about Kobe, right? And he used to play with Kobe and sadly passed away. And I said, like, "Hey, tell me how was it to play with Kobe?" He's like, "Dude, like, I show up at the gym at like 4 a.m. and thought I was earlier than everybody," right? Kobe shows up. Now, we all heard these stories, right? Kobe shows up before. But then Kobe spends 3 hours, like, just practicing one jab step, just one thing. Like, 3 freaking hours. And I just finished the whole workout and he's just doing one thing. Then gets a shower, comes back, and then he's like back on the training. And I was like, this guy is not normal, right? Like, and he was telling me he's almost depressed. He was like, "I don't know whether I can do this. Like, I don't think I can do this day in and day out. And these people are just not normal."
No one can keep up with that. Right. Only someone else who's obsessed or stroke not normal can keep up with that. And like, even Cristiano, he used to put leg weights on his ankles and go to another pitch after training and do skills, step overs. What you see, I saw him do thousands of times, shift and shoot.
Yeah,
he was doing that behind the trees because he was embarrassed years ago as a kid. Like, it's not like, this is what the kids are. They see everything now and think, "Oh my God," it's repetition, consistency all the time.
This is also true, I think, in the business tech world. Like, for example, I have never seen a great tech CEO who is not in all of the details. Like, I think this whole idea that micromanagement is bad is a lie.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the great ones, the Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musk, and you can quibble with the personalities, but they're all in the details and they look and play with everything. Like there's this great story which Aarthi tells me about, like Zuckerberg tries out every social product, right? And so one day, one of Priscilla, Mark's wife's friends, calls her and it's like, hey, yeah, I saw Mark on Tinder, right? Like, I think it's a fake profile. And she's like, no, it's him. Like, that's him. Like, he tries out everything.
Wow.
He tries out like, everything.
Yeah, that, and I think the other thing we've seen, at least in our world, in the tech world, is this underdog mindset. Anybody can come in out of nowhere and can crush you. And so you wake up every single day feeling like you have to sort of fight for your life every day. And this is like really big CEOs, people who've made it, like Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, like all of these people, they have this like crazy underdog mindset. And I don't know if that's true for sports as well, where you feel like you can't just rest on the awards and the medals and everything you have. You wake up every single day and you have to fight.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I don't know if it's underdog mentality in sport. For me personally, it was more, I'm always fighting for recognition. Sir Alex Ferguson, my manager, one of the most successful managers ever, he didn't really give me recognition vocally or outwardly in the media or the defenders. So I'm sitting there. He knew my personality. Maybe if he gave me that, I might have relaxed. But he didn't. So I was always striving to be better, to prove to him, to prove more. A bit like my dad was the same. Didn't say much. Always trying to get a positive comment out of him. And and then you utilize any negative press. That's what I was. I was one of those. If there was a negative story, that's all in my mind, is pinned on the wall. And every time I wake up in the morning, I see who wrote it. So when I see him, I know. And I see the big headlines all the time. And that's when I'm doing my hard running, when pre-season, when no one's there. They're the things that are keeping the fire going for me. I needed something.
You use that as motivation.
Yeah. And a lot of the biggest sports stars, they need rivalries.
Like Jordan, famously.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you need, like, you look at Federer and Nadal.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can go on. You need these rivalries to become, like, I think, to go past greatness or sustain greatness.
Yeah.
I think, leading to that, you talked about greatness. What does it mean to be a captain? In your world, in the world of sports, how does a captain lead the team? What does that culture setting look like?
Yeah, because, I mean, you're playing for Man U, right? One of the most historic, franchises in all of sports, right? Like, I grew up in India, half the country was either a Man U fan or Gunners. We don't want to talk about that. But, the Red Bulls are iconic. And then one day, you get a little bit of cloth on your arm, which means something, and you get the pressure and the press. So how did you handle all of that? Like, what did that mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the history at the football club could be overwhelming. Like, you see the stories and the success that they've had and the big names they've had there. But I always just thought that I've been given the armband and I'm captain for the way I am and the way I've been up to this point. Like, you don't change. You continue doing what you're doing. You maybe tweak a couple of things, but you don't make wholesale changes, because I've been given it because I'm doing the right things. One of my biggest things that I thought about when I was captain, my role is to make other people play better. My role is to make other people feel more comfortable. My role is to make other people feel they have a responsibility for the team. And so that might be on the pitch for encouragement. That might be in the change room, having to pull somebody and say, listen, you need to this isn't the way we do things here, and in different ways. Like, a lot of people, some leaders are shouty and aggressive. Sometimes you can have the same response with a joke, but it's got a tinge of, that's going to keep them thinking for a bit longer, or do it in public, or it's just being able to read the room and read the individual, how you deal with them. And I think those are big traits of captains that have to be right.
I want to ask you about the culture at Man U. I'm going to do that by showing you a video. And I want to walk me through what you're feeling when this whole thing is going down. We do it high scale here. This needs no introduction.
Oh, wow. It's gone. I'm thinking it's gone now. We've lost it. One of the worst moments in football.
Keeps United in it, but
bleeding.
Mm.
Terry to win it.
Beautiful.
Oh, he slipped. Unbelievable. A lifeline for United. Ryan Giggs. 6-5.
Nope.
Ryan Giggs scores in the rain.
I was next.
It's an Elker. Saved by Van der Sar. It's all over. United.
Best moment of my career, that.
So walk me through living through all of that. What did that feel like? Each kick.
I think I grew 1,000 grey hairs. I think I lost some hair and I lost weight. That's just so stressful because everything's been built towards that moment.
Mhm.
Like the whole year, whole season is built to that one moment to go and make history, to win. Like you say, the added pressure of the history of the club with that competition as well was huge. And I was actually the next person to take a penalty. If he had scored that, and I was going to be next. So I was so scared in that situation because I'm not used to taking penalties. So it's like huge pressure. You don't want to be the one to miss. No, that's like almost like a career-defining moment there as well. To lift that as captain is just like surreal moment because I've dreamed about that moment. And one of the lasting memories I have of that, it wasn't even on the pitch. It was afterwards. The legend who sadly passed away not long ago, Sir Bobby Charlton, who won that previously for the club. He came down to the steps before we go up to pick the trophy up and kind of just had a little 30 seconds with me and just like talking about history, what it means for you to go and lift this, what's gone on before. And while he was talking to me, I heard my mum screaming, shouting, like screaming my name. And I swear I broke down, started to tear up and cry. And I remember my defensive partner said to me, Rio, not here. And I just gathered myself and then we went and lifted the trophy. But yeah, really emotional moment.
If you look at that and the Sir Alex era at Man U, like Sir Alex, I think maybe one of the greatest leaders in all of sport and business. And you talked a little bit about that. Like Beckham talks about, the boss, and I think what did Sir Alex do? Because he doesn't show up in the change room. We can talk about how he kind of shows up like pretty rarely. What did it mean to set up that culture? What did you learn from him?
He's a unique guy, man. Like for 20 plus years, he was still the first into training every day. So I used to go to training. I used to take my kids to the nursery on the way to training, which would be a little bit earlier than we'd need to be. And we used to have to be in, I think, at 9:30. And I would get in at maybe 8:30, really early.
He would be there.
His car's there. And I used to think, how is this guy doing this? And when I'm leaving, you look up in the office, his car's still there and he's in the office still. Like, the guy was just, his desire, his dedication, the way that, again, consistency of always being there. I reckon it only a handful of times in my 13 years at the club, he wasn't on a training pitch. He was there every day. Now, he never took the sessions. He never coached us. He was always just his presence. And if them 5 or so days that he wasn't there in my 13 years, the standard of training came down a little bit.
It's just role modeling the consistency.
Yeah, like if he's here 26 years, how can you not be here? How can you not turn up? Do you know what I mean? My desire is the same. My will to win is burning. That fire's burning stronger now than ever after 26 years. And you're coming in after 1 year, 2 years, and you think you can drop. The level doesn't drop. But he was always about standards in training. If the training wasn't sharp and aggressive and the quality wasn't there, he'd stop the session, come in, well, do you want to train? Do you want to train, guys, or not? And then training jumps back up again. Just like, and what was great about him, there's a couple of things. He was great at evolving with time and differences in culture and dealing with people. He never dealt with one person the same as the other. Always treated you as an individual, which was great.
And knew you.
And he knew you. He took time to know you. So he knew. It's mad. My granddad, he sadly passed away, but my granddad came to a game. He's never met my granddad. Granddad came to a game. It's mad, this. And we're in the lounge. We have a players' lounge after the game. And I'm going to see my granddad. How you doing? Are you all right? Where a drink comes over on the table. That's for you, Jack. And I look up and said, it's just from the manager. It was his whiskey that he likes to drink.
Wow.
Like, I'm like, what the... Like, so the attention to detail, but then he knows I'm running through brick walls.
Right. Because you want to do this for him out of loyalty.
Yeah.
My mum was in hospital once, really badly ill, a few years ago. Flowers turn up from the manager. He's got 101 things to think about. My mum's in hospital. Was one of his 26 players, and all of his staff. But He shouldn't even be on his radar, but it is. And that he's building an emotional connection.
You know, when you look at Sir Alex, right, like he's dealing with some of the most famous human beings on the planet, right? You have the Ronaldos, the Rios, the Beckhams, right? And, you know, and they have sometimes their own agendas, egos, obviously. I mean, look, you don't get to this level, you know, without some of that. On the other hand, you're trying to bring them together as a team. And some people, for example, Phil Jackson, you know, with the Bulls and the Lakers, figured it out. Belichick with Brady, etc., figured it out. And some people don't. And some people just don't have a different set of players. So when you look at the managers who seem to be able to figure it out, when you're dealing with multimillionaires, billionaires, you know, kind of businesses to themselves, but also team and individuals with ego and insecurities and mental health, what are some of the lessons that you think people watching this who are like trying to manage teams of individuals, like what are the things that you've seen them do right? And also maybe seen them do wrong?
He was great at delegating as well. When you give people responsibility, I think you get a lot of good out of people. And I think he was great at that and saying, right, you go and manage that area, whether it be recruitment or you manage the logistics or whatever it is with the team. And those people were given the confidence to go and do that. And if it goes wrong, I'll be here and I'll come down on you, but I'm going to give you the autonomy to go and do it. He was great at that, but I think setting a winning culture, and I think there was a couple of key things: discipline, standards on a regular basis, consistency, showing up every day, and being there for each other and creating an environment where you're together. So we've done a lot of team bonding stuff. We'd go to the pub, we'd go for lunch sometimes, we'd play cards on away trips, we'd play big quizzes. One thing he allowed people, like I say, delegating, but he allowed. So for instance, I wear the armband one day, yeah. But we've got probably 4 or 5 captains in that changing room that he allows to help lead. And in our changing room, where we're there every day in a training ground, 300 days a year, probably maybe more. How many times, so I was there for 13 years, 300 days every year. How many times do you think he came into that changing room?
I put the answer from you already and it shocked me, right? Like that it's such...
3 times.
Wow.
In the 13 times that I was there. One to say he was leaving, another for discipline reason, but 2 of them for discipline reasons. Like because he allowed us to run the change room. So he recruited players who he knew wanted to win, were desperate to win, would buy into the culture, were disciplined again, and were hungry individuals. And then whoever wasn't and didn't meet that criteria, there were 4 or maybe a few, but didn't meet that criteria, he was very, very kind of like cutthroat. If you're not here for this, then you got to go. Yeah, and he done it. For instance, we had Ruud van Nistelrooy, Jaap Stam, David Beckham, all in the prime of their careers. Roy Keane, a bit past his prime, but huge characters, big egos, big names. If they didn't adhere to some of these things that he put in place, you're gone. Now, we woke up one day and Roy Keane was gone. He was the captain because the manager didn't like something that he done. Right, see you later, gone. No messing about, not letting anything linger that could affect the culture, the environment of the changing room.
If you look at, for example, like Belichick, right? Like, you know, one day he decides that, hey, you know, Brady is just not the guy, and that was the end of that legacy. And it's hard because especially when you're an emotional, iconic part of the franchise, you know, the fans love you and there's all this history. It is really hard. It's a very good segue into building a winning team. And I think one of the things you've talked often about is the role of veteran players and what they bring to the table. Because we live in an era of these huge celebrities, huge transfer fees. That's one. You know, we just had Mbappe show up in Real and so on. And on the other hand, you have these focus on young players. How important is it to have veterans who kind of seen it, been there? Maybe they're not, maybe they lost a step on the pitch, but in the changing room, on the team bus, they can still be. What do you think about that?
One of the key components. I don't care how good the young players are. Without the experienced players, doesn't work.
Why
you don't become successful because they've walked that path. And so, for instance, a good example, I signed for Man Utd in my first season. We're near the top of the league, fighting for the league. We go to Southampton, we draw a game. And now we go behind in the league to the opposition because they've just won. I'm in the change room, so low. Oh my God. I'm in this shower and I'm listening to 2 of the senior players. Well, that's a point gained. That's cool. We're all right. We didn't lose. Point gained. It's fine. My confidence straight back up. And I'm thinking, oh, we're actually okay. Now, if you've got one of your players who's integral in your team, whose confidence is low and thinks this is a terrible moment, we're on the way down, we can't win the league now, that can then spread to other players, and it's a big problem. You need the experienced players to shape the environment and to shape the mood and the ambience to bring positivity back after a bad result or a bad weekend. And I think it's critical what type of older players and veterans that you have in that change room as well, because you can have players that are getting old and become bitter,
right,
and then ruin the environment. You need older players that are there with the experience who want to share the experience, share the knowledge, and cultivate a good environment for these young players to come into and go, oh, that's how we do it. Let me follow that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Even if you're not on the pitch, like that, you look at Real Madrid now.
Yeah.
Mbappe's going into that change room. Who do you think he's going to look at? Modric. Modric is the oldest player at the club. Probably not going to play as many games. But I'm telling you who watched Modric more probably than anybody else, because he's the one who's been there, seen it, done it, has the experience.
How hard is it for somebody like Mbappe, right, like to show up and you're part of, the new Galacticos and you're there? Like, what does it look like to be like, everyone knows who you are, but you're kind of trying to figure out the chemistry and the dynamic? Sometimes it works, in the NBA, for example, often you get some of the big three and it works, but sometimes it just doesn't work. What do you think is the key to chemistry and figuring it out?
Yeah, if you just look at Mbappe, I think humility is massive in that sense. If you're a superstar, genuine superstar going anywhere, you need to be liked as well. Do you know what I mean? You need to be like, in that environment, you don't want people on your back or on your case because you're egotistical or you're coming in as the big Hollywood I am. You need to be liked to a certain extent, but humility, I think, is massive. And I think ability is not questioned with someone like Mbappe. We all know how good he is. Like the top guys in any world or any business, they've proved what they can do. You go into a new business, there needs to be humility walking into that room. So then people go, okay, we'll embrace you, we'll help you, we'll show you, because everybody needs help.
Yeah.
When you go in somewhere, there's no one's won something on their own. You need help. Whether it's a golfer, you see him on his own, but his caddy's there. He's got different people that are in his team probably. So you need to be able to make sure. And I think Mbappe, I think he has it. But I think if he shows it and he expresses that humility perfectly in that change room, it will be a success at Real Madrid. There's also jealousy. Do you know what I mean? That's why I talk about being liked. You walk in, you're the highest earner, the most eyeballs now. You've taken the spotlight of someone else. Jealousy is human nature, can creep in. You've got to quash that. And that's where being liked, being nice, having the humility, but then you need all of that and produce.
Yeah, you need to.
Yeah, it all has to come together. You can't be liked and people say, yeah, great, but you're not winning or you're not producing.
Yeah.
You need it all to come together, which is the difficult thing.
This happens a lot in the tech world, though, people are not as famous as Mbappe. But what I see this pattern, let's say you're a hot shot, from a very well-known company, your Facebook, you crushed it, then you get hired into a different company. The mistake often people make is like, oh, everyone knows who I am. I know how things are done. My name is in the press all the time. You show up. But people are like, hey, you need to produce here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got to earn, we're going to give you some respect because we know who you are, right? But you haven't done anything for us yet. And you got to fit into our culture, our system. And a lot of people can't cut it. Like when I was at Facebook, you would often see these people from Google show up, right? Like, and this is not exactly, PSG to, Real or whatever, but people like, hey, I did all these things at Google search and come in, but Facebook, like, great, but what are you doing here? And we have our own people, we have our own ways of doing things, and you better figure out the culture sooner out. And a lot of people just can't cut it.
Yeah, but it's also like, what happened then has no relevance now in this new club or new company. Like, we don't care what you done there.
Yeah.
Come and prove it here now, because I'll respect you more then. Like what you done there does not affect what we do here, man. You have to get that in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for some people to get that, but it's just the truth.
Yeah, I think since we're talking about technology and just parallels there, you've been talking to technology companies, startup founders. Coming from your background, captain of the team, it's just this sort of like sense of just seeing it all and then looking at this totally other industries, technology and startup founders. What do you see? Are there parallels? Do you see things where it's like, oh, I don't think they have that perspective. My perspective is a bit different. What do you see in the tech world that you sort of think is similar or different from the world of sports?
I think there's a lot of parallels. I think there's so many. I think it's like communication is key. For any company to be successful, that from the top down needs to be communication.
Yeah.
And if it's clear, everybody knows their roles. There's a lot easier process having good people. Like there's no changing room that works if you've got bad people in there. You've got to get rid of the bad people. If they're not good enough or if they're bad as people, as humans, gone. And be ruthless. Yeah. And I think that the more often in some of the business that I've been in, the more leeway and time you give to bad eggs, the bigger the chance of your success to dwindle away and just become an afterthought. And it disrupts everything, and you can't accept that. And I think having that ability to make decisions and don't be scared to stand by and make those decisions is key. I mean, I look at Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the best things that he was so decisive. Not every decision is going to be right though. And I think you've got to go in, you've got to make a call and go into it with the right intentions. And in the long run, you should get it. You get it right, and as long as you've got a lot of them other components working in the background. But I think it's having the courage to make decisions in the heat of the moment when everything's on the line is what is going to make or break you as a successful businessman or footballer.
Yeah, you kind of been very active on the investment side and the technology. We're kind of talking about this. What are things where you've gone to a CEO leader, be like, hey, this is not my world, but you should think about, doing something slightly differently, or here's what I see.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys that I've been involved, come into contact with in the tech world are very receptive to an opinion from outside the tech world. So I'm not known for being in the tech world, and I don't have the experience of you guys for many years of doing it. It was really refreshing that a lot of the CEOs or founders were like, what do you think? Like, because when I flip it and go, a footballer or football manager isn't really good. I don't see many of them. Maybe it might be changing now, but I'm going to go to someone from another industry and go, well, how are you doing that? How do you think I should? Because they just think this is insular, this is what we do. No one knows about it. Yeah. But I think the world's changing a bit, and I think the tech guys are definitely a lot more forward thinking and open for that type of stuff and to get a different perspective. And I was talking to you before about Saul Klein, who's a good friend of mine, Local Globe, shout out Local Globe, great guys. But being with him, and he's such a great mind, and he's like you said, he's like an OG in this world, and he's just his perspective is always over there somewhere. You'll go, I didn't think about that. Yeah. But for me to be around someone like him, I just love it. Yeah, because he's bringing new stuff to my mind, new ways of looking at things, and he's looking at some of the younger guys and making them understand you have to listen to different voices. And I think it's such a great culture that he has and he sets as well in that sense.
My take, and the reason why I think technology people are more receptive to hearing feedback, advice, input from other fields is, I think technology or the world of software by itself is sort of a means to an end. You can build software, but it has to be useful to someone to do something. It can be to help, banking or watching movies or building, gaming systems. But the tech by itself is sort of pointless unless it serves a purpose. It does something for someone in a particular field. And so it is important for us, I think, Sriram and I, from a very long time, we're we need to understand and map how the world works and how these leaders in different industries act. And I think for our podcast too, we like interviewing people like you, even though ours is a technology podcast for the most part. What we've realized is that people at the top of their game, whether it is sports or music or movies or books, the mastery of the craft and the way they tell the story is all similar. They all really very passionately feel about their journeys and how they've been able to make it. And every one of these stories, I think, is eerily similar on how they came up and were able to grow through the ranks, be the captain, be the leader, do something, win something, make a movie, that kind of thing. And I think for our listeners and viewers too, you sort of see the parallels in there. So I think that's sort of why the world of tech, I think, is much more conducive and receptive, because these stories are pretty much the same, even though the paths everyone's taken is sort of different.
Yeah. Also, I agree with that 100%. But also, the tech world is such a fast-moving, evolving industry that if you don't talk and hear the new ideas, you're going to go behind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's almost like you have to talk, otherwise you are nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
The storytelling part is just like so key. And because the world of business, things are, we're just talking about AI a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Things move so rapidly. It's a very interesting segue into the business of sport, because in the last 2 years, it's funny, we just saw our kids and we're trying to make sure it's football, not soccer. Right? But having said that, we just seen Messi, go play for Miami. It seems like a huge success. And, Beckham has does a great job getting him over there. And that sport, I think, is off to the races a little bit with the MLS in the US. We've seen, obviously, Ronaldo and others move to the Middle East and play over there. There's been changes in ownership here in the UK as well. And, someone like Man Utd, for example. When you think about the business landscape of football in 2024, what do you think is interesting, which maybe an outsider may not perceive?
How the clubs stay connected to the fans. I think in this in football, I still think there's a long way to go. I think there's in terms of especially building tech through a football club to connect to the fans. I think there's so much more that can be done. You look at the content that's around now. You look at the clubs, and I just feel there's so much scope for that to be done with these clubs, with the players, the individuals, with history, etc. We're seeing shows being done, which is fine. Like,
what do you think, Ted Lasso, for example?
Yeah, these are great. These are unreal. I'm actually writing a show at the moment, actually. So watch this space. Yeah.
All right.
I'll talk to you about it after.
Yes.
But yeah, I just think that the way in which the club connects with the fan through technology, I think there's a huge shift going to happen in the future. And I think football's because it's such a dominant sport in terms of numbers and like stickiness, they love the game, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the numbers are worldwide are crazy. Football can afford to move slow because they know that they're always going to bring the masses. So they're just football seems to be like we're second, third, fourth mover, always because wherever happens, like Ronaldo just comes onto YouTube now. Got 50 million YouTube subscribers in like 5-6 days.
Yeah,
because he knows they're gonna come.
It's so depressing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Here we are, slogging it out, for every few thousand, and he gets the plaques on the first day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love that Sriram compares himself to Ronaldo. They're supposed to be
Well, you guys are the Ronaldo of your industry. I believe it all like that.
Thank you. Rio knows how to flatter, but the YouTube was just shipped it to him before. Even before he started the channel, they shipped it. You're going to have it.
They knew.
But on point storytelling, by the way, Rio just has one of the most interesting YouTube channels and shows out there, which you're going to link to. And I was preparing for this and watching through a bunch of videos. You have a phenomenal, hilarious interview with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, which is fantastic. We link to it. Everyone should watch it. Hugh supports a weird team, and I'm like, it's so.
But even that goes back to my point. Content.
Yes. I was going to say Ryan and Rob McLean, who's been on our show with Wrexham.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
And no one would have called it.
Yeah.
But when I was speaking to him off camera, it was like, it hasn't gone. I said, was this route that you've gone and you now got ridiculous fans? Your advertising model is huge now. The commercials that you've got around the club are huge. It's paying for itself through all of the revenue you're bringing in. Was this all an absolute plan? He's gone to plan. He said, no, well, not really. We had an idea of what we wanted to do, but it's obviously gone off piece here and there, but we didn't anticipate it being this big, maybe so quick and whatnot. So they've had an unbelievable run, and they've just shown again, if you can produce the right narrative and content around a football club, no matter how big or small, you can create some big revenue and interest. And like they've now got an American market that a lot of English clubs, probably outside of the top 6 clubs, they're nowhere near, just through content.
Yeah.
So that's my point about Man United. Again, always a last mover in a lot of areas outside of the pitch because they can afford to be.
Yep.
Even with YouTube, they went on it very late compared to other clubs, but they know they have a volume of fans that are always going to be there. But when Man United start tapping into that fan base properly, I don't know where it can go, because it's a beast.
Yeah.
It's in some ways, I think, like you said, like Man U or all the big clubs like Liverpool, like, they don't need to do this because you always got a history.
Yeah.
But like, no one had ever heard of Wrexham.
Amazing story.
And so I would say a lot of my connection to some of the lesser known English clubs come from watching documentaries and shows on like Sunderland, right? Like comes from Netflix. And who do you think is doing a good job now? Where you're like, you should keep an eye on these folks because their social media, their storytelling, they're actually doing a good job. Outside of your upcoming show, which we're going to
Yeah. Who's doing a good job? Football clubs. I think Arsenal do a good job. Maybe not as much content.
Rio Ferdinand says good things about Arsenal.
This is exclusive.
That's going to be the title.
But I think Arsenal are the best right now at connecting to culture.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they have their latest kit that they have come out. They wore at the weekend, a black kit. It's designed by an immigrant. So if you think about the political standpoint of in the country at the moment, maybe around Europe and around the world, immigrants, they're not people that seem to be given a lot of chances. But this guy's now developed and produced and designed the Arsenal kit. But they're not hiding away from that. That's one of the narratives around it. Tapping back into the history of the club, certain players that were part of culture as well back then, now coming back into the fray with the advertisement and stuff. So the way they're doing it, I think that they have a good idea of their fan base and connecting that fan base through the old icons, but also, like I said, an immigrant in design. Just that's one play.
Yeah.
But I think the leadership of that club in recent years, trying to get them back to a point of really winning things, I think they've been quite an astute bunch.
Earlier, you talked about culture. And I think Wrexham and the documentary, and when we talked to Rob McElhenney, it sort of inadvertently moved the culture forward in an interesting way. Like, this is this like small town, sort of middle of nowhere. Like, at least for America, they have no idea what Wrexham is. But it sort of represented the small town nature of this, like, every American town that you see, that sort of like not talked about, unheard of, especially through the pandemic and beyond, sort of like became obscure and irrelevant a bit. And this is this like comeback story where they sort of like punch above. And it's both this like underdog feel good story, but it's also the story of like redemption, moving forward. And I think every person who's from one of these towns looked at Wrexham and said, we could be that, we could do that. And it sort of moved culture forward in like a very interesting way.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like I see as the potential for what sports can do and storytelling around sports can do.
I think it's important. Like, it's shown people that it's not all about the results.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it's like the story, the content
journey.
story, the journey. Like, it's like characters behind the scenes, and it's like football's been very kind of stuck in the mud in that football results determine revenue. It determines the sponsorship interest. Everything is surrounding results. Yes. And I feel like that at Manchester United. But the world is changing now, and it's obviously content play is huge.
And by the way, Rio has a fantastic, YouTube channel and podcast. There'll be a bunch of fun stuff coming out now, including your episodes with Ronaldo. So we're going to connect to it. Rio, you've been such a great advocate for mental health and talking about it. And, as preparing, you were talking about seeing a sports psychologist and how, for example, you would watch, say videos of Suarez playing and trying to visualize what he was doing on the pitch and trying to get ready. In the 90s and 2000s, talking about mental health was just not cool, right? You were considered weak. It was not masculine. But now, sitting in 2024, I was thinking about how we just had Simone Biles in the Olympics, crush it, win a zillion different medals.
And had this whole comeback.
Have this whole comeback because, she sort of very famously got so criticized for what happened the last Olympics. English cricket has had, obviously, many players, deals, struggle with mental health issues and all to talk about it. Do you think in NBA, we have people like Kevin Love and others talk about it. Do you think the conversation on mental health has shifted? Like, what do you see in 2024 as we sit here today in professional sports?
It's definitely becoming more kind of accepted to talk about. I think when I played, it was like a no-no. I was even one of the guys that if someone was talking about, I don't know, I ain't really feeling good today, I would not be accepting of that. I'll be like, you don't want to win. Like, so, and it's wrong. But that was the culture back then. That is the difference. The culture, I think, is changing. In the media, it is played out as being more acceptable to talk about. You should talk about it. I think it's a lot difficult for everyone, women, but for men it's even more because, like you say, that machoism that is comes in a dressing room, especially or in an office space where there's egos that are around, and it's like, who's the biggest macho guy in the room?
Yeah.
So to say that, listen, I feel a bit vulnerable today, or emotionally I'm not there at the moment, is very difficult to say. But I think it's something now. I think more people that we see is doing that, like Kevin Love in basketball, and myself even in football and others. The more people see people talking like that from them industries, it normalizes that conversation.
It feels like there's almost like this cultural struggle now, right? Because on one hand, Kevin Love has been in the NBA. I think he's probably one of the first most open people kind of really talk about it. You've probably been one of the most forefront people in like football. Simone Biles in gymnastics. There's been others in other sports. But there's still this element of push through it, right? Like work harder, right? Like no weakness, show no weakness. And I've never played professional sports, but I can see why people feel like, that sort of gladiatorial, very macho spirit. I can see why that exists. On the other hand, Kevin Love was talking about how he just kind of shut down and he couldn't play anymore and he kind of had to like find himself. So how do you sort of reconcile this thing of just push harder, be it in the training room or the weight room and never showing weakness, especially to an opponent, because that's like a big no-no. On the other hand, but like you said, right, like, some of these things just might push. Like Simone Biles, for example, she's the best in the world. Obviously, very, very clear. She does things no human being can. But there was a moment in the last Olympics where her body just stopped knowing how to make a basic jump. Basketball players go through this, by the way, where they talk about how, sometimes they just forget how to make a free throw.
Yeah, like Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
For a little while.
Yeah. And it's the most basic of things. And in football, by the way, I'm kind of curious to get your take on this, kind of making this very concrete. Taking penalties. There's been this new trend now where, players somebody escorts you there, brings you back, you're more supported. Like, how do you sort of reconcile, like, the macho spirit versus people maybe, forgetting or struggling with issues?
I think the environment has to be built around allowing people to be okay to be vulnerable and to be maybe down for a moment. And if they need to shut down, so be it. Yeah. Like, there has to be that space, I think, within the football club or within the office working space for people to feel okay to do that. This happens. Like, we want you to come back. We're gonna create an environment where you can go into your shell maybe, or need to talk to somebody, or we're going to help and facilitate your recovery to get back to with the group. But I think unless that space is created, you'll have more and more people that just kind of fall away and become kind of isolated and on their own, and then all of a sudden digress down to being kind of a shadow of their former self. I think that, again, in sport, people are embracing these moments for people and creating almost heroes out of the back of it. Like Biles coming to the Olympics now, from what she went through to where she is now, the story's even greater. Yeah. You know what I mean? The wins taste sweeter because of those moments that you've gone through. And I always think hardship, whether it be mental health or whatever you've gone through, those hardships, we talked about wanting more when we were kids and not having as much, but then when you win and you do well, it's such a much better feeling.
Yes, yeah. And also at the end of the day, you want to root for these people because they've been through so much adversity. They've sort of seen, I imagine, we have not been in the situation, I imagine being in front of the whole world, everyone watching you, having this high pressure situation. And then I'm guessing when you go walk into a bar or a pub, restaurant, people talk about you, people look at you. And it's very hard, I'm guessing, to like deal with that sort of pressure, especially if you're not doing well. And then to sort of like overcome all of that and sort of take a break and then come back 4 years later like Simone Biles did. I think it's very hard for the whole world to not root for her and cheer for her and be like, that's amazing that you did that. It just, like you said, it tastes a lot sweeter now because you've done something that most people didn't expect you to do because you went through so much hardship.
And I think Simone is interesting because in the NBA, for example, there's like 82 games a year. And then there's every year, the Olympics happens once every 4 years. The World Cup, the Euros happened every 4 years. And so people remember like those moments. And which may be one final question on this topic, which is, penalties. Like Aarthi hates it. She turns off the TV, right?
I can't handle
sure.
the pressure.
Right?
I have no idea how the players do it. I can't handle it.
And we when you look at history, we see people become heroes or villains. Like people Baggio, right, 92, and or so on. People becoming heroes. And if you were in a team, it goes to penalties. It's a big game, a final. What are you telling the guys, right? Like as they're lining up, like what are you doing? What are you talking to them? Do the best players go first? Do they hold back later?
No, I want the best ones at the beginning.
Why?
Because if you've got the weaker ones at the front and you miss early, it's hard to kind of rectify that. And if you're scoring your strongest ones at the front, you're putting pressure on the opposition.
And you have a winning streak.
Yeah, and then he scored, building the confidence then. So I always just used to say, don't change your mind. Don't change your technique or your mind on the way up to the penalty. Because the moment you start thinking about,
Overthinking.
you're overthinking, clouding your decision making. It's just, you don't want no fuzziness. You want pure clarity when you're going in there. Just like in business, you're going to a meeting, you know what you're doing, you set your stall out, you know where you're going to go, you know what the number is. Don't deviate. Don't go away from it.
It feels so random. Like, I look at the whole thing and I'm like, well, who knows? This could go either way. This just seems totally arbitrary.
And you can't prepare for that moment because you can't recreate pressure.
Yeah.
Right. You can't recreate the 80,000, 100,000 people in the stadium, the millions watching when you're in training. But that's where repetition does come in and it helps.
If somebody misses and they're walking back, what are you telling them?
Like encouraging people and just making sure, listen, we're all disappointed. It's not your fault.
Right.
And we could have won this 100 other ways.
Yeah.
But we got it down to this point and you've now become the guy that this is not.
That's the part that's crushing for me. You play for all this time. You're sweating it out there. You've proven that you can score or you can at least equalize, which is why you're here. And then it's like this last 5 minutes of penalty shootouts that sort of decides it. And it seems very arbitrary to be like, this is the decision maker of how this entire last 2 hours went.
But that's why the game is beautiful, right? Like, I think if you look at all the great sports, there is a moment of arbitrary, which is heartbreaking, right? I always think about, for example, in boxing or UFC, a knockout can come out from nowhere. It's heartbreaking. Like, and the line between tragedy and triumph, a hero or a villain forever, right? Is so small.
That's why the heavyweights are so much more interesting, I think, than the other, because in the heavyweights, they have the ability to knock someone out with one punch. So there's jeopardy throughout the whole fight.
Whole thing, right? Like, I always think about, like, if Harry Potter was real and you had Quidditch, it's like all of a sudden, like, somebody here's the thing at the game ends for nowhere. And the crowd is like, I didn't even see that. Like, where did that happen? But the switch. And okay, well, if you miss a penalty, Rio is going to be hard on you. Okay, one last big theme, because we can't let you go without talking about this, which is the current state of Man U. Okay, you've been vocal, you've been talking a lot. Let us say somebody suddenly, waved a magic wand and made you the owner of Ineos. You had all the power in the world. You control all things Man U. You own Man U. Everything. What would you do?
I think they've done a really good job so far, Ineos, by the way. I've spoken to a few of the guys that are in good positions there, and they're really. I keep using the word sensible, because Man United for a while have not been sensible in recruitment, transfers, etc., wages they've given out, etc. So it's been a sensible kind of transition so far. What would I do? I would be recruiting players that it's not about them, and that one player isn't going to win us everything. I'll be recruiting players that are going to come and be part of the team. And it's not about you're going to win us this, and making sure that the whole culture understand that and build that culture of us and we rather than I. And I think for far too long, it's been about individuals at the football club, and it's not just the players, it's the staff. We're instilling like that confidence and that belief again, I think is a huge thing. And that's not necessarily a financial thing. That's a leader coming in and really building that culture from the top down. Man United, when we were successful, Sir Alex Ferguson, but a CEO like David Gill, who they worked in tandem, who there was authority, there was discipline, there was consistency, there was a desire and a work ethic that was there that underpinned everything. If you can see that as a player walking in, as a staff member, then I think that filters down and you start having a chance to start creating that culture. And Man United have been a bit far away from having a real positive culture at the football club for a long time, and I hope that now changes.
So this man, in charge of Man Utd. Okay, if we have nothing else, I want to ask him a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
But okay, rapid fire before we wrap up. What do you learn from running a restaurant?
First impressions are important. So the front of house person. So when you walk into a restaurant, the first person you see can give you a real good indication as to if you're going to enjoy the experience, if you're going to want to come back maybe.
Like another guest sitting there?
No. So the person, like the person
The host.
who greets you, the host who greets you.
Yeah.
So when you walk, a smile. But also, you've been before. Hi, Mr. Ferdinand. That makes me feel important.
I never get that. That's probably just you.
Yeah, but not even that. But also, do you want your usual? Do you know what I mean? Do you want the I don't know, the burrata for starter again?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
those details of remembering and making it personal to that individual. Everyone should have a personal experience. You
We
shouldn't
used
be.
to have a restaurant like that in Seattle that we used to go to every Saturday. And it took them like a few months. But then one day we showed up and they were like, the usual. And we were like, you know who we are.
I'll be back.
Because then it's family.
It's our
Yeah.
place.
thing.
Yeah.
And I'll tip.
Yeah.
And I'll bring friends because I want that treatment. I want them to see that.
I
I'm
want
always
them to
here.
see that.
When you
Yeah.
say it's unusual.
So it's our egos talking there.
How hard is ballet?
Very hard. If you've not done ballet and you think it's easy and you look down upon ballet, I'll test you to go and
You
try
should
it.
explain this. Like, you've done ballet, which is kind of
Yeah.
hard for people to visualize. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I was about 11 years old. I'd done gymnastics, and a ballet scout, I didn't even know that ballet scouts, saw me and said, you look like a ballet dancer. I was like a young kid on the estate playing football, running around causing craziness. And for someone to pick me out as a ballet dancer was wild to me. The reason I had quite hard parents discipline-wise. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere on my own. This was an opportunity for me to go somewhere without my parents, meet new people, and do ballet, and something that I'll find interesting maybe, and see what it's like. I ended up going for 4 years. Best thing I ever done. As a kid, wanting to be a footballer as the long thing. But it gave me strength, again, dedication, consistency, always having to go there, and also different in terms of poise, balance, so many things that were contributed to me being a footballer. It was brilliant.
I love it. Okay, don't look down on ballet. And
Central School of Ballet, one of the best schools in London.
there we go. But someone who looks like that, which is just, I love it. Well, yeah, one last thing. Drake and Owen Hargreaves in the changing.
Did you see that? Yeah, that was wild, huh? That was unreal. It was mad. I brought Drake. Well, Drake came to the training ground and I took him for a walk. This is when he was like on these, like just breaking through. He's one of his, I think maybe his first album, I'm not sure. He came with all his crew, walking him around the Man United training ground. And Owen Hargreaves is English, but he's born in Canada, obviously where Drake's from. He knew about Drake. And I said, you got to come and see. One of the guys came in there. Owen, he's in the shower. Owen says, yeah, walks out, drying himself out of the shower like this. And then sees Drake and all these guys just standing there, and they're looking at him like, where's his clothes? Nothing on, dripping dry, like crazy. But yeah, mad experience. And Drake never spoke to me again after that.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. Rio kind of toned down this story, right? Like there's some veggies involved. But the Rio, where can people find you online?
Yeah, come to my YouTube channel on the podcast. It's called Rio Presents. We just rebranded, actually. We've got some great people coming on. We've got Ronaldo, we've got Bex and a few others coming on that are going to just keep the standards high. So all things football, like you say, talking about leadership,
Not soccer.
team, soccer. No, not soccer, football. But no, listen, I love it. That's one of the things I love. I'm involved in a lot of businesses, but again, going out and meeting people and talking to people like you guys are doing, it's just like, I love that.
Man, this is such a blast, and you should come back on this. There's so much fun.
Yeah, man, I love it.
Amazing. This is really fun. We were, this is our first sort of in-person setup in our house.
Privileged to be the first, and thanks again, man. Nice to see you.
Like, setting the bar really high. But thanks, you. This is brilliant.
Yes.
Nice, guys.